Is your home your biggest investment? Is a home investment at all? Should you even buy a home, or should you rather be renting? These are all different questions that I get asked all the time, and I'm gonna help you think through that process because the answer is it depends. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back, everybody. So if you're new to the channel, I just want to let you know, on Thursdays we talk about investing. Typically we talk about cryptocurrency investing. It's the most explosive asset class in the world. I'm super excited about it. We talk about investing into other assets as well. On Tuesdays I like to talk about before you invest. So what do we do before we invest? Because we invest with money we have left over. So we talk about increasing your income and so forth. So today we are going to talk about renting or buying, the difference between the two, because that's going to make a big difference on how much money you have left over to invest. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure you click down below, click the subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell so you can get alerted whenever I put new videos up. And if you haven't already, click the like button because you know I like to get those likes. All right, so let's get right into it. So, should you buy or should you rent? It's a question I get asked all the time, and people don't typically like my answer. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know the reason why is because I don't tell you exactly should you buy or should you rent. The answer is it depends. I don't know. It's not a debate. There's not a debate whether which one's better or worse. It depends on you. It depends on your specific circumstances. It depends on what you want. There's so many different things, right? So let's step back and let's take a look and let's understand this first of all. So as I said in the intro, a lot of times people say that owning your home is the biggest investment that you'll make. And let's think about that. Now, it's the most expensive thing that you'll buy. Sure, it's the most expensive thing that you'll probably ever buy. But is it the best or the biggest investment you'll make? So I don't consider your home to be an investment. Unpopular opinion, right? Think about that. So what I consider investments or assets is two things. We have assets and we have liabilities, right? Assets make us money. Liabilities cost us money. So when I invest into things, I invest into assets. I invest into assets that make me money. I don't invest into things that lose me money. Those are liabilities. And so where does a house fall in? If I buy a house, does that house put money in my pocket, or does that house take money out of my pocket? Now, I think if you really think about that honestly, the house is taking money out of your pocket every month. You're paying, right? Now, it is some sort of like a forced savings, and I'm gonna dip into that in a minute. We'll talk about forced savings, but it is forcing you to kind of put money in every single month. But really, the house is costing you money, so it's not really an investment. So let's get the investment part out of the way so we can really start to look at some of the other reasons why maybe I should buy or I should rent. Now, like I said, it depends. It depends on a bunch of different things, and I want you to understand what these things are so you can decide if it's right for you or not. Now, number one, I would just say right off the bat is like, can you really afford it? That's like the biggest thing right off the bat. Like if you can't afford it, none of the other reasons even matter. Do you have enough income? Do you have enough income to pay for it? Do you have enough income history? Like, have you been working for long enough to have built up enough history where you can expect to reliably pay that income for a while? Is your income stable? If your income is up and down, it can be really hard. And the reason why this is important is because losing your home is devastating. Not just psychologically, losing your home is devastating to your credit. And it could take you a decade to get back. I mean, a decade is hard to lose out of your life, especially when it's in your 30s or 20s and 30s, to lose a whole decade. So you want to make sure that the income is stable enough that you can at least continue to pay that. Now, another way, number two, the second thing that I look at is it cheaper to rent or than buy? All right, so we want to think about that. And it really helps with number one, and I'm going to explain that. So number two, is it cheaper to rent and then buy? And look at the rent to mortgage ratio. So if I can rent for cheaper than I can buy, then it probably makes sense to rent. But if I can buy for cheaper than I can rent, then I should probably buy, right? If my rent is not enough to cover the payment, that means it's negative cash flow. So let's say I'm renting a place for $3,000 a month, and I decide to buy a place for $4,000. I buy a comparable place, but now it costs me $4,000 a month. So now it's costing me $1,000 a month. I could rent it for $3,000, but now I'm paying $4,000. So I'm losing $1,000 a month. Can I rent out my house for my house payment? That's what I'm talking about. Can I rent my house out for my house payment? And I said I tie it back into number one because can you afford it? So let's just say that you think you can afford it, but some unforeseen circumstance happens. Your job gets outsourced. You can't find another job. You can't afford your house payment. You have no income. Can you rent your house out? If you could rent your house out for the house payment, at least your house payment's getting made and you're not gonna lose your house to the bank and you won't have a decade of bad credit problems to deal with, right? So think about that. So for two reasons. Is it cheaper to rent than buy? If it's the same cost to rent that it is to buy, then it might, or I'm sorry, if it's the same cost to buy as it is to rent, or you could rent your house out for that house payment, then it might be a good idea for you. Now, number three, if you're still young and hustling, you may not want to buy. Now, Gary Vaynerchuk, shout out to Gary V. I'm a big fan. He made several videos and news appearances and said that young people should not buy a house. He actually went out and said that he thought that buying a house early in his life was one of the biggest mistakes that he's made. Because when he was young, he was hustling, he was working hard, he was making money, he was making stuff happen. And he had opportunities where he could have deployed capital that could have made him multiple times returns. But instead, he put that money down into a house and he passed up on opportunities that he could have had that could have made him way more money. So he says that when you're young, you're hustling, there's better ways to use your money. You can find better uses for that money, and maybe you should do that. All right, focus on the house when you're late, when you're older, when you're more stable. When you're young, you're hustling, find ways to use that money, make that money work really hard for you. Now, number four is kind of carrying on from step number three. But number four is if you're stable and established, maybe it's a good time to buy a house. So if you're young and hustling, you're not stable and established, right? So that's one reason why you wouldn't. But if you are stable and established, so now you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, you have some kids, now you want to be stable, you want to be established. If you can afford it, if the other ones apply, you want to stay long-term. You have kids, you'd like to see your kids grow up in the same house. You'd like to have the same house for your kids to come back to. Well, then maybe that's a good reason why you should buy that house. Another reason that probably most people don't think about, number five, is buy a house if you're an entrepreneur. Now, why would you buy a house if you're an entrepreneur? What the heck does that even mean? Well, I talked about earlier that, and I've talked about in other videos, that debt can be a way to force savings. And buying a house is a way to force savings. So as an entrepreneur, you're probably pretty risky by nature. And that means that you're going to be taking lots of risk with your businesses and you're going to have your good times and your bad times. And buying a house will at least force you to start putting money away. Now, as an entrepreneur, you're probably very resourceful and you'll probably always figure out a way to get that house payment paid. And you're creative enough to do that. But because we're so overly optimistic, we run into problems sometimes. And so that house is a good way to force us to savings. So that'd be a reason why you'd want to. Now, the biggest thing that I think about though, and here's my main criteria. So this is number 6. Could the money be more effective somewhere else? So I've said it time and time again. Money goes where it's treated best. I want my money to work harder than I do because I work pretty dang hard and you probably work pretty dang hard for your money too. So you want your money to be working harder than you do. Can I get some likes for that? Smash that like button if you want your money to be working hard, yeah? So we want our money to be working hard. So what do I mean by that? So think about this. If I'm going to buy a house, and we talked about the rent to payment ratio, right? How much do I have to put down on a house to get the payment that I have right now? All right, so think about this. So let's say that the house is $500,000. I have to put 20% down. So I have to put $100,000 down. And even if I put $100,000 down, my payment would still be more than I was renting. So let's say I have to put, let's say I have to put $200,000 down. So now I have to put $200,000 down on this house just to get my payment to where my rent is. Because you have to think, when you buy the house, you also have your property taxes you have to pay, you have insurance you have to pay, you have maintenance on the house you have to pay, and when you're a renter, you don't pay any of that. So not only do you have to pay for the mortgage, you have to pay for all those other expenses. So you have to think about that. So if I have to put $200,000 down to get the same payment I would have as a rental, okay, well, that's $200,000 that could be doing something else. So if I were to put that $200,000 to work, and let's say that I'm making 10% on that money, that's 20 grand a year I could be making. So let's see, would I want to put $200,000 down to have my payment be the same as my rent payment versus my mortgage payment? Or would I rather just rent for the same amount of money and have an extra $20,000 a year of income? Think about that. And it depends. What is your goal? What is your target? If you've been watching my videos, you know I talk a lot about the game. To get out of the game, the way to win the game is to keep your expenses low, get your passive income up. Once your passive income meets or exceeds your expenses, game over. You have won the game. You have freedom for the rest of your life. So if that's the game you're trying to win, maybe you'd rather have the low payment and the extra 20 grand a year, or maybe you'd rather have the house. Those are 6 things that you need to think about, and it's specific to you. So hopefully that makes sense. If you like those things, give me some thumbs up. If you don't like them, give me some thumbs down. Leave me comments down below. I love to respond to every single comment. I want to know your questions. I want to know your concerns. Tell me which of the number 6, 1 through 6 things that you're thinking about the most. That's it. To your success. I'm out.